The first thing that we're going to do to build this game is to build a dashboard page, to build that first page that we saw with the market share and all of the price information. So this is a shared page. This page is going to be viewable by both of our roles. All players will have access to this page and will start on this page. And what you're going to learn here is how to make a pie chart and how to make a table using numeric display objects. So the first thing I want to show you when we get into Stella Architect is the interface window. Here's where we can build our interfaces. All of the tools that we use to build our interfaces are at the top. Running down the left is a list of thumbnails like you would see in PowerPoint that let you preview each of the pages in your interface. And if we hit the X squared button, we can go and view the model. The model that we're using for this simulation has already been built, and let me explain a couple of key concepts for you inside of it. The first is that here is the decision for price, and price is arrayed by company. So if I go to the array editor within Stella Architect, you can see that I have a single dimension company, which has three elements: Google, Amazon, and Apple. Each one of those companies is allowed to set a price and a subscription price. We calculate a number of customers for each of the companies, and we calculate a cumulative profit for each of the companies. There are these other two variables here, game advanced and game over, which are going to become very important in later parts of this webinar. The first, game advanced, is either 1 or 0 if the time is divisible by 3 or not, and the game being over is either 1 or 0 if the current time is the last time step. So let's go ahead and go back to the interface using the Open Interface window button and start building our user interface. So like we were saying before in the PowerPoint, the first thing we need to do is create the dashboard. So what I'm going to do to build the dashboard is I'm going to use the graph tool. I'm going to click once on it, click again to place it, and then I'm just going to lay it out on the page more or less roughly where I want. In the top of the panel, the settings panel, which we use to control all of the options for the device that we've just placed, I'm going to choose the pie option to turn this into a pie chart. I then use the green plus to add series to this graph. And what I'm plotting here is the variable called market share. It then asks me, hey, Billy, which market share do you want to put in this graph? Do you want to put the Google market share in the graph, Amazon's, Apple's, all of them? That's what the star means, or question mark. Question mark is an example of a wildcard, which we'll cover later on. In this case, I want all of them, so I'm going to choose the star. At this point now, my pie chart is set up, but I need to clean it up and make it easier for users to understand. The legend being market share bracket Google is a little obtuse for the kind of user that I'm envisioning this simulation being used by. So I'm going to update the legend title of this series to say Google, and then I'll select the next series in the list and change its legend title to Amazon, and then I'm going to change the final one to Apple. When I do this now, you'll see that my legend looks a whole lot nicer and easier to read, but what we're missing is an indication of what this pie chart is showing. So if I hit the wrench down here, which is the settings for my graph, it changes what kinds of options I'm looking at, and it lets me enter in a title for this graph, which is going to be market share. So now we've made our market share graph. The next thing we need to do is build a table of our prices. To do that, we're going to use the numeric display widget. So I click once on it and click again to place it. And using the same old green plus from before, I'm going to choose the variable I want to display, which is going to be actual price for Google. Okay, so now the numeric display has been placed, but it doesn't look exactly the way we want it to look. So we need to do some things to format it the way we want it. The first is going to be to change the title from actual price Google to the word Google. And then we're going to go over to the style panel, which is always represented by the paint roller, to change the way that it looks. The first thing we're going to do is increase the font size to 14 so that it's much more easily read. And then we're going to change the background color from blue to white. Once we've done that, we can give the device a bit more padding around its contents to make something that looks like a cell in a table. So now that I've set up a single table cell, what I'm going to do is duplicate it using Control-C, Control-V, and Control-V one more time to set up our three numeric displays. And then using the layout guides, which are the blue dotted guides, I'm going to make sure that I get these three devices aligned nicely so that they share the same X and width positions, setting up a table. I now need to modify the two widgets that I just copied and pasted to represent the actual price for the two other companies. So rather than using the green plus to select the variable all over again, because I know what the name of the array element is that I'm looking for, I can just type it in directly as Amazon, and I'll make sure to update my label the same way. This third row is going to be Apple, so I'll change Apple and Apple. So now we've created the first column of our table as well as the label column, and what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the numeric display again that we created initially to make the second column in our table to represent the subscription price. This numeric display is going to be a little bit different in that it's not going to show its title. In this way now we can have a numeric display which is just a number on its own surrounded by a box. Here I'm going to use the green plus to select the new variable, and the variable I'm looking for is actual subscription price. And in this case, the actual subscription price for Google. So now that I've got that set up, what I'm going to do is align it such that it becomes the same size as the other table cells. And then I'm going to move it a little bit to the right here. I'm going to copy it and paste it twice, just like I did before. And then I'm going to start changing the variables again. So instead of Google here, I'm going to do Amazon and Amazon. And then I'm going to do Apple and Apple. I'm going to change the variable to refer to Apple and the title to refer to Apple. I'm changing the title even though it's not visible, just in case I ever decide one day to change this interface and make that title visible. The way that I simply align these devices is using the layout guides and my mouse, and whenever I get it close but not perfect, I can use the arrow key to fix any mistakes that I make. In this case, I've been lucky and I got everything to line up nicely using the layout guides. Now that I've made the whole table, I'm going to select it as a bunch, and by mistake I grabbed the market share. So I'm going to hit the shift key and click on the market share graph to deselect it so that I can move this bunch of elements all as one group. Finally, the last thing I need to do is enter in the labels for the two columns, which I'm going to do using a text box. The first column is labeled unit price, where price is on its own row. And what I'm going to do with that is make it a bunch skinnier so that I have an easier time aligning it to my table. And then I'm going to change its font size from 12 to 14 so that it's more easily read, and place it above the column. I'm then going to copy it and paste it and put unit price above the other column. I can double click to edit the text. I'm going to change the word unit to sub for subscription price. We've now created our dashboard page.